Hey guys, tonight we slide into the shadows of ancient Japan. Lanterns flickering low, snow softly dusting the rooftops, and danger curling like smoke around a sheathed blade. You're standing in the shogun's palace, silk-clad nobles bustling past, and something's definitely off. The air's thick with tension. A man in the corridor is breathing too loudly. You hear the slap before you see it. And just like that, your night takes a very, very sharp turn. You're about to walk in the footsteps of 47 men who sacrificed everything for revenge. Not the impulsive kind, but the slow-cooked, disciplined, we've planned this for over a year and wrote poems about it kind. Spoiler alert, you probably won't survive this in one piece emotionally. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is right now. I want to imagine the whole sleepy globe tuning in. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're standing at the edge of a tatami-matted corridor in Edo Castle, 1701. It smells like polished cedar, incense, and restrained fury. Lord Asano Naganori, daimyo of AKO, is pacing with pinched brows and clenched fists. He's a young man high-strung but proud, and today is not his day. See, Lord Asano was called here to host envoys from the Emperor, an important ceremonial duty, and he's been assigned a tutor of sorts, Kira Yashinaka. Kira's job? Teach Asano how to properly behave at court. Sounds boring, right? Except Kira is the human equivalent of a paper cut. Petty, elitist, and deeply, aggressively smug. Kira's been needling Asano for days now. Whispering insults. Demanding bribes, which Asano, being somewhat idealistic, and a bit uptight, refuses to pay. The final straw? Historians still argue whether it was an open insult, a sideways glance, or maybe Kira intentionally botched a ritual out of spite. Whatever it was, Asano snaps. He draws his wakizashi. Not the long katana. This is the short companion blade, but it's sharp enough to kill. He lunges. Kira stumbles back, shrieking. The blade slices across his face, barely wounding him. There's a splash of blood, then chaos. Guards rush in. Kira is alive. Asano, for drawing a weapon in the shogun's palace, is as good as dead. You'd expect a trial, maybe some appeals, right? No. This is the Tokugawa shogunate. Order is everything. Asano is immediately placed under house arrest in a nearby mansion. Before the ink dries on the paperwork, he's ordered to commit seppuku, ritual suicide. You follow him into a dim room lit only by a single candle. The hush is unbearable. The walls are paper. Everything smells faintly of ink and ash. Asano kneels. The assistant beside him is expressionless. Asano opens his robes, pulls the blade across his stomach in a practiced arc, and the assistant, before the pain overtakes him, delivers the merciful, clean decapitation. All done in silence. At 28 years old, Asano Naganori dies in disgrace. Out in the world, this news hits like a thunderclap. The samurai of AKO, Asano's retainers, are now Rōnin, leaderless warriors. And being a Rōnin is basically samurai rock bottom. No lord, no purpose, no honor. Their clan is dissolved. Their lands are seized. Their castle is confiscated like a bad report card. But here's where things get interesting. You'd expect a few of them to scatter, maybe start over as mercenaries or bodyguards. And yes, some do just that. But 47 of them, led by the steely, utterly unpredictable Oishi Kuranasuke, don't let it go. They just go quiet. Really quiet. And here's a weird tidbit to chew on. Kira Yashinaka? He survives the whole encounter with barely a scratch on his face, yet demands a massive security upgrade and starts dodging shadows like he's being stalked by actual ghosts. Maybe it's guilt. Maybe it's ego. Or maybe he knows something's coming. You meanwhile step into the sandals of Oishi. Picture this. You've just lost your lord, your job, your reputation, and your favorite kimono all in the same day. But you keep your face calm. You smile. You bow. You pretend to be defeated. The truth? You're already planning a vengeance so carefully orchestrated it will take over a year to unfold. In the nights to come, Edo buzzes with gossip. Why didn't Asano just bribe Kira like everyone else? Why was his sentence so swift? Some say the shogun had no choice. Any weapon drawn in the palace, no matter the reason, meant death. Others whisper that Kira had powerful friends. That Asano's family wasn't connected enough. Again, historians still argue whether the punishment fit the crime or whether it was political theater. But you don't care. You're already in the thick of it. You walk through the alleys of Edo, wrapping yourself in the anonymity of grief. You burn old papers. You hide your sword. You write to your comrades, carefully in code. Meanwhile, the AKO castle lies abandoned. The walls still smell of oil and war. You remember the halls, the training ground, the cherry blossoms that used to fall in the spring. Now there are vines on the gates and crows in the rafters. Kira, for his part, is promoted. He gets more land, more guards, more silk robes and bitter tea. And while he fidgets with his new titles, he keeps an eye over his shoulder. Because you Oishi aren't done. You begin the long act of deception. First you move to Kyoto. Not as a warrior, no, too obvious. You start dressing down. You drink, loudly. You gamble. You wander into geisha houses. You grow a beard that makes you look like a disheveled poet or an off-brand philosopher. And word spreads. Oishi Kuranasuke has given up. This, of course, is the point. You know Kira's spies are watching. Every drunken stumble. Every hangover. Every bad poem you mutter into a cup of sake is part of the plan. You want him to relax. You want him to believe you've broken. And you're not doing this alone. Your men, scattered like stars across different cities, are playing their parts. One becomes a carpenter. Another a monk. 2 open shops. 1 marries a merchant's daughter. They're hiding in plain sight, checking in, waiting. Snow begins to fall again in Edo. The calendar quietly ticks forward. And you? You keep your eye on the road. On the blade. On the plan. There's a famous letter from one of your men to his wife. He says, "My soul is not mine now. I gave it away the day our master died." Romantic? Sure. Reckless? Maybe. But it gives you a glimpse into what binds these men. A loyalty so fierce it outlives the man they served. And one random fact to take to bed with you tonight. In the months after Asano's death, a small kabuki play was written about the incident. But the censors banned it immediately. Apparently, even fictionalizing the story felt too dangerous. That's how raw the tension was. Now the first snow has melted. A year has passed. And deep beneath your ragged disguise, the old samurai heart still beats. Slower now, but steady. You're leaning against a sake barrel, half asleep and half drunk. Or at least that's what you want people to believe. Your robes are stained, your beard wild, and a pair of gamblers next to you are loudly debating whether you become a joke or just a sad leftover from a forgotten clan. You smile to yourself. Let them talk. Inside your ribs, your heart ticks like a fuse. You're Oishi Kuranasuke, former chief counselor of AKO. And this disheveled disguise isn't for fun, it's survival. Strategic, slow burn revenge. Because the truth is you're not broken. You're burning. Quietly. Patiently. But to pull off what you're planning, you have to vanish into the background. And that means no sudden moves. No swords. No suspicious letters. Just the slow, humiliating work of pretending you no longer care. It's been over a year since Lord Asano opened his belly in a mansion under arrest. Since his blood soaked the tatami and his blade was taken from his dead hand. You still see it sometimes in your dreams, short, gleaming, resolute. You hear the final breath. You remember bowing before the empty sky. And every morning you remember why you're still alive. Back in Edo, things look normal. Kira Yashinaka, yes, the same smug official who took a slap from Asano and ran crying to the shogun, is thriving. He's added new rooms to his mansion. His household's guard has tripled. And yet, he's started leaving his house less. He doesn't attend as many ceremonies. He moves around like someone who can't stop listening for footsteps that never come. Because the threat of revenge, you realize, might be even more terrifying than the act itself. Still, your fellow Rōnin are scattered like leaves. The clan was disbanded after Asano's disgrace. But one by one you've kept in touch, in secret. Coded messages hidden in innocuous letters. Meetings that look like coincidence. Phrases that seem like poetry but hide real plans beneath the surface. There's Yasabai training with bamboo poles in a dojo across town. He teaches children how to bow correctly, but at night, he sharpens his sword and murmurs your name. There's Horaibe, who started selling incense and funeral paper, of all things. Fitting. Smells like destiny. And then there's young Chikara, your own son, still pretending to be just another student in the crowd, but eyes sharp as ever. Historians still argue whether your coordination during this period was formalized or spontaneous. Was there a master document? Did you use an old code? Or was it all just an understanding? Unspoken but ironclad? There's no surviving evidence. You were that careful. And then, quietly, your preparations face their first test. One of your Rōnin, let's call him Shinbei, can't take the waiting. His father's reputation is in tatters. His wife left him. And now he's in debt. He writes to you in desperation, saying it's time to strike. Right now. Tonight. He has a bottle of oil, a knife, and enough rage to fill a mountain. You reply with a single sentence, "Our enemy is not asleep yet." And that's the truth. Kira, for all his cowardice, is not stupid. He's waiting for an attack. He expects it. So long as he stays afraid, he stays armed. But there's a rhythm to fear. Eventually it slows. A year passes, then another season. And soon the daily fear becomes a dull throb, a bad knee on rainy days. That's when you strike. But first, more theater. You take your disguise further. One night, in the middle of Kyoto's pleasure district, you get yourself arrested for public drunkenness. You shout obscenities. You fake a fight. They drag you away like a fool. The local magistrate shakes his head. "What happened to the great Oishi?" someone mutters. You hear them. You let it hurt. And back in Edo, Kira receives the report. "Oishi is lost," the messenger says. He's nothing but a drunk now. Kira sips his tea, slightly less paranoid than yesterday. But you're just getting started. One of your men takes a job as a firewood seller near Kira's estate. Another offers his services to a paper shop right across the street. And a third? He disguises himself as a beggar and just sits outside the mansion, day after day, memorizing the guard's shifts. And now here's your fringe tidbit of the evening. One of the Rōnin actually married the daughter of a carpenter who worked on Kira's house. That marriage? Totally staged. But it got him inside the estate. Legitimately. He took mental notes. He counted rooms. He measured hallways with his steps. Love may be blind, but revenge? Revenge has a blueprint. Still, the hardest part of this plan isn't the disguises or the lies. It's the waiting. You've told your men again and again, we don't act until he drops his guard. Until his walls are thin. Until even his dreams forget our names. And then one snowy morning, a courier arrives at your door in Kyoto. It's a letter from a man inside Kira's household. 3 key things have changed. Most of Kira's guards are new. Young. Inexperienced. Kira has stopped worrying. He's even begun traveling again. The estate's back door, yes, that door, is often left unbarred at night. You set the letter down, trembling. Not with fear. With clarity. It's time. But you don't move yet. You don't even twitch. Instead, you start walking. One town at a time. Visiting the men. Not openly. Quietly. A nod here. A glance there. And with each visit, a whisper, "The bell will ring soon." In your sleep, your dead lord appears. Not as a ghost, but as memory made flesh. He's smiling. Not kindly, more like that firm, samurai smile that says you finally understand. The snow begins to fall harder in Edo. You gather your son, your sword, and on a bitterly cold night, you board a small boat and drift toward destiny. You're no longer a drunk. You're a storm coiled in silence. You step off the boat with frost biting at your sleeves and resolve frozen into the creases of your robe. The docks of Edo are hushed beneath a blanket of fresh snow, the water sluggish with ice, and your boots crunch just a little too loudly for a man with something to hide. You're not hiding anymore though. Not really. You've returned. But not as Oishi the fool, not the bearded drunkard who danced with geishas and slurred through shame. That mask is gone now, folded and stored away like an old kimono. You walk upright, every breath deliberate, every footstep coiled with purpose. It's been over a year and now the cast is gathering. One by one your comrades emerge from their false lives. Yasabai arrives first, carrying only a travel pack and the subtle scent of old sweat and oiled steel. He doesn't say much, he's never been one for words, but when he sees you he bows low and that's enough. It's a bow loaded with everything, grief, loyalty, readiness. Then comes Horaibe Kanemaru, grinning like a man who's just rejoined his body after a long coma. He's leaner than before, eyes like polished obsidian. "My wife thinks I've gone to the mountains," he mutters. She's not wrong. Over the next few days more trickle in. A candle maker with a familiar scar. A monk who doesn't quite pray like the others. A traveling seller of salted fish who just happens to carry his goods in sword-length boxes. By the 10th man, the quiet inn you've taken over feels less like lodging and more like a nest of wolves beneath a very delicate roof. You're back in Edo, the city that kicked you out. And now she doesn't even know you're here. The city is swollen with the New Year's buzz. Market stalls humming, fireworks on the horizon, everyone drunk on sake and snowflakes. No one suspects a thing. Because who would? The 47 have been officially scattered, disgraced and, according to every report, harmless. But in reality you've never been more dangerous. Your men check in quietly under code names at odd hours. You count them each day like puzzle pieces falling into place. 47 in total including yourself. Every man accounted for. Every life voluntarily laid at your feet. And this is where the plan, meticulously, maddeningly planned, begins to breathe. The men are broken into two teams. Team 1 will storm the front gate. Loud, chaotic, theatrical. They'll draw the guards, crack open the estate, and make it rain noise and panic. Team 2? They'll circle from the back, through the garden wall, over the snow-covered hedges, quiet as breath on glass. Their job: find Kira. Quickly. Before he escapes again. You go over the layout for the 100th time. Where the staircases end. Where the paper walls might give way. How long it takes for a fire to spread. You've even measured how far the guards could shout before help from another estate might arrive. The conclusion? You'll have exactly 30 minutes. Any longer, and the entire city could descend on you like hornets. And here's something bizarre. During all this meticulous planning, you've also had to pretend to be clumsy. That way, if one of Kira's remaining spies sees you or one of the men slipping up in the marketplace or bumping into a guard's cousin at a sake stall, they think nothing of it. That's right, you're rehearsing your own incompetence. At night, you gather in silence beneath the paper lanterns. No sake. No laughter. Just calloused fingers sharpening blades that haven't seen daylight in a year. Some of the younger men write poems. One about the sound a sword makes cutting through frost. Another about walking into death like it's a bath after battle. Meanwhile, you finalize the most delicate part of the mission. Evacuation for the families. No one talks about it much, but it's understood. After the attack, if any of you survive, you won't be coming home. The law is clear. What you're planning is illegal. Revenge, even for honor, is still murder. And murder, no matter how poetic, comes with consequences. So each man takes steps. Some send their wives and children back to the countryside. Others divorce their spouses quietly, leaving behind small gifts and silent apologies. One man writes a note that simply says, "Forgive me. I died when our Lord did. This is just the burial." Historians still argue whether you expected to die that night. Whether the mission was meant as a one-way march or if, deep down, you hoped the shogun might pardon you all for upholding Bushido. Maybe it was both. Maybe it didn't matter. Now here's a quirky little wrinkle. A few of the men actually dye their hair gray. Not to disguise their age, but to look like commoners or elderly servants. The logic? No one looks twice at a frail man sweeping a doorstep, especially not when that man could take down 5 guards in under a minute. But even with all the genius, there's one problem. Kira is slippery. You don't even know where in the mansion he sleeps now. He's moved rooms 3 times, and some whisper he has a secret passage. Possibly a trapdoor under the floorboards, possibly just a paranoid fantasy. Either way, you can't afford to miss him again. You set up a scout in the neighboring tea house. A Rōnin disguised as a humble delivery boy begins noting which windows light up late and which ones stay dark. One night, he sees a servant take rice to a room at the far end of the estate, twice in a single evening. That's your clue. The man you want is still alive. And now, finally, you know where he sleeps. You're sitting in a cold, smoky room with your sword across your lap when the last man enters. He closes the door behind him and bows deeply. "All is ready," he says. You nod. And in that moment, the past dissolves. The disgrace. The wandering. The years of pretending to be something smaller than you are. You are Oishi Kuranasuke again. A samurai. A commander. And vengeance has a pulse. The night air grips your lungs like a hand of ice. You exhale slowly, watching your breath curl upward, soft and spectral. Snowflakes drift lazily around you, quiet, lazy sentries falling over the sleeping city of Edo. You shift your weight slightly, the worn soles of your straw sandals crackling softly beneath you. Behind you, 46 others stand still as statues in the dark. No more sake. No more disguises. No more waiting. Oishi Kuranasuke, the real you, tightens your scarf, glances up at the inky sky, and takes the first step through the snow. You're not marching. You're gliding. The city's asleep, but your heart isn't. It's pounding, steady as a temple drum, right in time with your steps. You're walking toward the final act. Each man behind you has sworn a personal oath. Revenge or death. And not the kind of death you put on a bumper sticker or whisper about dramatically. No, the real thing. Open robes. Drawn blades. A goodbye kiss left on the forehead of a child who might never understand why Dad disappeared into the snow that night. You pass shuttered shops, frozen canals, lanterns burned down to their final ember. Somewhere a dog barks once. Then silence again. Oishi halts just outside the gate of Kira Yashinaka's mansion. You know the estate well by now. High walls, elaborate gardens, 2 entrances. The front gate, where the guards patrol in pairs, and the rear servant gate, usually left unlatched. You've tested both. You've timed the rotations. You've counted the guards. All night, for months, you've been listening to the mansion breathe in its sleep. Tonight, you smother that breath. You split the men. Team 1, led by Horib, surrounds the front gate. Big, loud, theatrical. They're the thunder. You and Team 2? You're the lightning. You approach the back gate, snow crunching underfoot. The gate is just as it was last week. Unlocked, barely barred, like a mouth left open in a snore. You signal. 2 men slip forward and ease it open with barely a creak. The garden beyond is blanketed in snow. Pruned pine trees, frozen ponds, stepping stones slick with ice. You enter. The scent of pine needles and distant charcoal lingers. The night is soft, but your heart feels armored, sealed off behind layers of resolve. You don't speak. None of you do. Just eyes, nods, and practiced movement. This isn't battle, it's choreography. Horib's team makes the first move. A battering ram, handmade from firewood and wrapped in rope, slams into the front gate. Boom. The house stirs. Boom. Footsteps scramble inside. Shouting begins. Boom. Crack. The gate splinters. You hear it. The door falls. Now it's your turn. You slip inside through the servant corridor, lit faintly by flickering lanterns. You know the layout by heart. Left past the storeroom, sharp right through the pantry, then down the narrow passage to the inner garden. That's where Kira's room is, or should be. Inside, the servants scream. Some flee. Others try to stop you with bare hands or hastily gripped kitchen knives. You do not hesitate. You strike, but you don't kill unless you must. No bloodlust. Just speed and efficiency. Every second you spend here, the odds tick against you. Outside, the front team floods in like a broken dam. The guards resist. Swords clash, with splinters, men yell and fall. But your side is winning, thanks to the one thing Kira's never truly respected: discipline. Your men fight like they've been waiting a lifetime to exhale. One by one, the guards go down. Now you're inside the main corridor, feet slipping slightly on the polished floor. You find the room that your scout identified. You slam the door open, sword raised. Empty. Just a futon and a still-burning lantern. Someone was here. Recently. The rice tray is still warm. You curse under your breath, but just once. No panic. One of your men, a wiry scout named Masatoki, points to the wall. There, he whispers. A sliding panel. You yank it open. Behind it, a dark passage, narrow, lined with wooden beams and storage crates. It smells like mold and mouse droppings. And somewhere inside, you hear the rustle of silk robes and the frantic scuffle of feet. Here, the man who started it all. The man who insulted your lord, got him killed, and now runs through shadows like a rat in his own maze. You give the signal. The pursuit begins. As you chase Kira, the house around you hums with controlled chaos. Blades sing. Doors splinter. One of your men hoists a torch and waves it like a banner. Firelight dances across painted walls. Your heart doesn't race. It settles. You're in it now. The moment you've trained for, sacrificed for, lived through disgrace for. And just a quick nerdy fact for the night. Your men are so well prepared they even brought buckets of sand to prevent the mansion from catching fire. Because even in vengeance, you refuse to let collateral damage spoil the poetry. You're not here to burn a house. You're here to balance a scale. Eventually, Kira is cornered. He hides in a storage shed at the edge of the estate, wrapped in blankets, trembling. When you pull him out, he doesn't scream. He doesn't beg. He's too far gone. Face pale. Eyes wide. Beard unkempt. You look him dead in the eye and ask, "Are you Kira Yashinaka?" He says nothing. You ask again. Still nothing. This is important. You need confirmation. Otherwise, the entire mission risks falling apart. Executing the wrong man would dishonor everything. Then, mercifully, one of your men recognizes the scar on his face. The one from Asano's blade. That faint line drawn across history. It's him. You offer Kira the same courtesy given to any noble, the chance to die with dignity. Seppuku. He refuses. Or maybe he's too far gone to understand. So you do it for him. You kneel beside him. Whisper a few final words. Then raise your sword. And with one swift, clean stroke, justice is served. Just like that. You place his head in a bucket. Yes, an actual wooden bucket brought for this exact moment. Wrap it in white cloth and signal to the others. It's over. Except it's not. Because what you do next might be the most shocking part of all. You march through the streets of Edo, in silence, at dawn. All 47 of you, robes blood-stained, blades still damp with effort, carrying the head of the man who destroyed your lord's honor. You walk to the Sengakuji temple. That's where Lord Asano lies buried. People line the streets. No one stops you. Some gasp. Some weep. Some cheer. One child tosses a flower in your path. At the temple gates, you kneel. You present the head to your lord's grave. You bow. And for the first time in 2 years, your body feels light again. Mission complete. You don't run. You don't hide. You wait. You know what comes next. The snow hasn't melted yet. Your knees press into the cold stone at Sengakuji Temple, and the heat of the last few hours, sword swings, sprinting feet, Kira's final breath, fades into a soft, aching stillness. You bow one last time, forehead brushing the edge of your fallen lord's grave. A bucket rests beside it, quiet and ceremonial, with Kira Yashinaka's severed head wrapped in white linen like an offering. Behind you, the other 46 Rōnin kneel in rows. Their breath fogs in the morning air. Not one speaks. You've done it. The plan, crafted in silence and sacrifice, has unfolded with surgical precision. And now comes the part that no scroll, no sword, no strategy could fully prepare you for. What happens after vengeance? Spoiler, there's no parade. You rise slowly, bones stiff, the temple floor leaving a damp mark on your robes. The head priest approaches, white-haired and shaking slightly, but bows with deep, silent respect. He knows why you're here. Everyone in Edo knows by now. Word moves faster than fire when the story is this good. The 47 have avenged Lord Asano. They've slain the powerful Kira. They've turned disgrace into legend. Now what? Well, now you wait. Oishi organizes the men into small groups, and you divide the next steps with surprising calm. You surrender. Voluntarily. You send notice to the authorities informing them of exactly what's happened. Where? How? And why? There is no denial. No attempt to disappear into the snowy countryside. No wild chase. Just brutal honesty wrapped in calm dignity. You'd think the city would panic, right? 47 men just assassinated a high-ranking court official in his own home. That's textbook treason. A full-on attack against the state. But here's the thing, the public doesn't see it that way. Crowds gather outside the magistrate's office, not to spit curses but to cheer. People whisper your names like prayers. The Bakufu, the military government, is left in an uncomfortable position. If they punish you too harshly, they risk public backlash. If they let you go, they undermine their own authority. You've given them the worst kind of political headache, the morally righteous crime. One government official writes, "These men have murdered, yes, but with such precision and loyalty that the heavens themselves might forgive them." Meanwhile, your Rōnin are split up and housed in the residences of various daimyo across Edo, placed under gentle arrest. Not prison. Not chains. Just waiting. Each lord tasked with watching over a few of you like tutors supervising very dangerous, very disciplined house guests. And here's your quirky tidbit of the day. One of the daimyo assigned to guard your men actually sends for a calligrapher so he can make beautiful nameplates for each Rōnin's room. Apparently he's a fan. You spend the next several weeks writing. Letters to family. Personal reflections. Poetry. One Rōnin pens a haiku that simply says, "Snow falls on my blade. Kira's breath still in the air. Justice tastes like frost." Nice, right? Others, like Horaibe, use the time to eat well, sleep deeply, and finally clean their swords with the patience of monks. There's a calmness to your little exile. Like men who've just exhaled after holding their breath for 2 straight years. Still, the political debate rages beyond the paper walls. The shogun's court is torn. Some argue you've committed the ultimate act of Bushido, the way of the warrior, selfless, loyal, poetic. Others see it plainly. You broke the law, took justice into your own hands, and must be punished. Historians still argue whether the shogun genuinely hesitated or simply needed time to calm the public. Either way, the waiting stretches on. And during that pause, the story begins to morph into myth. Pamphlets circulate in the streets, retelling the tale with increasing flair. Plays begin rehearsal in secret. Puppet shows, kabuki, anything that might echo your footsteps. The Bakufu bans all public performances of the story, but let's be honest, that just makes people want it more. The commoners love it. You're the people's samurai now. But you're just tired. One evening, sitting in your temporary quarters sipping tea, you get word that one of your men, Heiano Kanpei, died in the snow during the march to Sengakuji. Heart gave out. His last words were, "Tell Oishi I made it halfway." You fold the message quietly. Add it to the stack of letters bound with red thread. Light another candle. Say nothing. You still have 46 names in your mind. But now, one of them already belongs to the dead. And just so you don't float off into full-on samurai sadness, here's a weird historical footnote. In one version of the events, possibly dramatized, a cat was said to have followed the procession from Kira's estate all the way to the temple, meowing loudly the entire time. Some say it was Kira's cat, some say it was a reincarnated spirit. Either way, it showed up and refused to leave. Creepy? Kinda. Adorable? Also kinda. Anyway, back in the realm of living consequences, you finally receive the order you've been expecting. The shogun has decided. But not disgraceful death. Not execution in chains or beheadings in the street. You are to commit seppuku, ritual suicide. The decision, while fatal, is a nod to your honor. A message to the public that the shogun acknowledges your bushido, even as he must uphold the law. It's a compromise between respect and rule. You bow when you hear it. You're not surprised. The others receive the news with similar calm. One even smiles. It's cleaner than I expected, he says, sharpening his blade with rhythmic strokes. You write your final letter to your son, Chikere, 17 years old. You tell him to live well, to remember your name not for revenge but for honor. And you leave behind your favorite ink brush, because nothing is more samurai than dying with both sword and calligraphy intact. Snow begins to fall again. You tighten your robe, kneel on the mat, and prepare for the end. But that's the next part of the story. For now, you take one last sip of warm tea, let the steam kiss your face, and watch the lantern light flicker across the paper walls. You wake to the faint hush of falling snow. Again. It's always snow now, as if the heavens have decided your vengeance wasn't dramatic enough and opted for full theatrical weather. Outside, the city of Edo still hums. Merchants setting up stalls, priests sweeping temple steps, the occasional rooster crowing with a kind of misplaced optimism. Inside your borrowed room, the air is still. Cold but still. You sit up slowly. Your back cracks just enough to remind you that 47 years on this earth is a lot harder when you've spent the last 2 of them pretending to be a drunken has-been with a blade under your floorboards. Today is not the day you die. But the end is close. You feel it? Everyone does. And while you wait, you decide to revisit the place where your enemy once lived. It's been weeks since the attack on Kira's estate. The mansion is now a husk. Guards gone, household dissolved, furniture taken out and sold or burned. The gate you broke down has been replaced with simple wooden planks. No ceremony. Just a silent bandage over a gaping hole. You walk past it quietly, hood pulled low. The snow swallows your footsteps. You feel no pride. No guilt. Just stillness. But Kira isn't the only ghost left in this story. Let's rewind a little. During those long years when you and your men were laying low, Kira was not enjoying a peaceful retirement. Far from it. Inside that mansion, now reduced to cold ash and rumors, Kira had descended into full-blown paranoia. He replaced his guards twice. He built higher walls. Installed night watch rotations that would make a paranoid hedgehog blush. And yet, the man couldn't sleep. He was aging like milk in the sun, twitching at shadows, snapping at his servants, checking doors 3 times before bed. Historians still argue whether Kira believed the Rōnin would truly come. Some say he assumed their honor would fade with time. Others think he suspected it all along but couldn't figure out when. What's certain is that by the end, he wasn't a man anymore. He was a trembling, aristocratic question mark wrapped in silk. Here's a fun twist though, he tried to get transferred. That's right. Kira Yashinaka, the all-powerful court official, actually requested a change in post to move away from Edo. Claimed his health was failing. That the climate didn't agree with him. Spoiler, the shogun said no. Which is probably why Kira spent his final months locked inside that estate like a squirrel that knew winter was never going to end. And the irony? All that preparation failed him in the end. Because it wasn't brute force that got him, it was your patience. 2 years of it. Quiet, measured, razor-thin control. While he panicked, you waited. And when he finally let down his guard, well, we both know how that turned out. Back in the present, you stand near the entrance to the old mansion, now just a silent corner in the city's map. No one lingers here. Children don't play by the walls. Merchants avoid setting up nearby. It's cursed ground now. Not officially but emotionally. People pass by with quick steps and muttered prayers. A woman selling fish gives you a curious glance. She doesn't recognize you. She just sees another middle-aged man standing in the snow, watching ghosts breathe through broken tiles. You turn away. You've seen enough. But the city hasn't. The story of the 47 is spreading like rice in a windstorm. People whisper it in tea houses. Storytellers perform whispered versions behind closed doors. Children reenact the raid with bamboo sticks and dramatic collapses into snowbanks. And let's not forget the official government reaction. The Bakufu? Still stressed. Because they now have a revenge story that everyone loves and they're supposed to punish the heroes. Tricky. So the shogun's advisors do what every bureaucrat does when something is both wildly popular and deeply illegal. They delay. They stall. They debate. And while they debate, the public does something incredible. They start painting you. Literally. Artists begin sketching your likeness. Scrolls are produced showing the Ronin lined up outside Sengakuji, snow falling, heads bowed. One particularly dramatic print shows you standing with Kira's head raised high, sword dripping red, eyes cast toward the heavens like an avenging god. Which is impressive since you were probably too tired to even stand straight at that point. And now here's a strange, delightful fringe fact. In the weeks after the event, anonymous benefactors, wealthy merchants, maybe minor lords, begin sending food and gifts to the estates where you and the others are being held. Pickled plums. Rare teas. One basket even includes a small hand-carved model of Sengakuji Temple with a tiny samurai bowing beside it. You're not forgotten. You're practically saints now. And still you wait. You're housed under mild arrest with a daimyo named Matsudaira Sadanabu, a man as stern as he is polite. He gives you a warm room, lets you write, and occasionally joins you for tea, though he never speaks directly about the incident. Just small talk. Weather. Garden conditions. Once he offers you a book on philosophy. You read it, then use it as a makeshift headrest. Chikara visits occasionally. Your son, now hardened beyond his years, always arrives with fresh ink, new paper, and that same silent devotion. You don't talk much. You don't need to. He's made peace with your decision, and in your heart, you've made peace with leaving him behind. Still, late at night, when even the coals stop glowing, you sometimes whisper apologies into the rafters. Not out of regret but longing. The kind that sits just under your ribs and waits. You begin drafting your death poem. As per samurai custom, it must be elegant, simple, honest. You write version after version, discarding some, burning others. The final one reads, "In the drifting snow, our blades return to silence. Honor does not die." You fold it neatly, slide it into a lacquered box beside your wakizashi and lie down. Outside the snow deepens. The city grows quieter. And somewhere far away, a storyteller recites your tale, voice low and reverent. They always pause at the part where you kneel, eyes calm, sword steady, as if the world were finally in balance again. Your breath leaves in quiet plumes as you rise before dawn. It's ritual now. You wake with the cold and sit with it, no fire, no tea, just the stillness of a world not quite awake. You imagine this is what it feels like at the edge of death. The last hush before the curtain drops, the moment where the applause hasn't started, and all you can hear is your heartbeat slowing to match the snow. Oishi Kuranasuke doesn't fear death. Not after everything. You hear movement behind you. The others are stirring. Chisaka Takafusa, your host and guard, knocks gently on the screen door before entering. "Today the message will come," he says. His tone is gentle but final. You nod. You've known this since yesterday, when word from the shogun's court whispered through the walls like wind through pine needles. Your fate has been sealed. Still, you wait for the official scroll. As the others dress in their white death robes, you pace the tatami with bare feet, tracing each groove in the wood. You think about AKO. About the training yard. About Asano's laugh, sharp, a little clipped, but always honest. You remember the day he received his ceremonial dagger from the shogun's hand, and how proud he looked. And you remember the look in his eyes when he died. Calm, resigned. But asking in that gaze, will anyone carry the weight after I'm gone? You answered that question with blood. And now it's time to pay your half of the deal. A low murmur draws your attention. The messenger has arrived. He kneels before you, presenting the order on pale parchment sealed with the government's crest. You take it with steady hands. Unroll it. Read each line slowly. Yes, it is time. The men gather in the courtyard, snow falling in delicate spirals. Each wears white, the color of death but also of purity, of resolve. They do not wail or protest. Not one face breaks. 46 men line up in silence, eyes forward, souls already halfway to the land of spirits. This is not despair. This is not defeat. This is victory dressed in a different color. But before we slide into the act of death, let's rewind to the day you snapped out of it. Remember when you were still pretending to be a broken man? The nightly benders, the crooked beard, the geisha tea houses you haunted like a drunk ghost? Well, not everyone bought it. A certain man, name lost to time, though some stories call him Saburo the Whisperer, followed you for weeks. He'd seen you fight once years earlier and didn't believe for a second that you were truly finished. So he watched, listened, waited. And the night you left Kyoto, that very man apparently burst into a tea house shouting, "It's happening!" knocking over a go board in his excitement. Not historically crucial, but definitely the kind of fringe tidbit that keeps the story human. Back in the courtyard, the preparations begin. There's no gallows. No headsman. This isn't that kind of death. Each man will perform seppuku, ritual suicide with a small blade, followed by assisted decapitation from a second, to minimize suffering. It's gruesome, yes. But for a samurai, it's also the most honorable exit available. Still, it isn't easy. Each of the men must kneel, compose themselves, draw the blade, and make the left-to-right abdominal cut. It requires strength, precision, and a soul resolved enough not to flinch. Your name is first. You kneel. The wind cuts across your face. Your son, Chikara, is among the witnesses, but he stands behind the line, fists clenched, not permitted to intervene. The appointed second, an old friend from your days of training, stands ready behind you. His face is stone, but you know his heart's bleeding through his chest. You draw the blade. Cold. Familiar. Yours. You whisper your final line, half poem, half prayer, and slice. The pain is sharp, like lightning bursting through your abdomen. And then, blessed silence. The blade falls. You are gone. The remaining Rōnin do the same one by one. Some do it quickly, as if eager to follow you into legend. Others pause for breath, eyes closed, offering a final memory to the sky. One man breaks tradition by laughing, just once as he draws the blade, muttering, "Well, at least I didn't marry into debt." Then silence. Historians still argue whether that line was true or apocryphal, but it's been retold in every version of the tale since. Because yes, even in death, a good punchline survives. When the ritual ends, the snow has stopped. Only footprints remain, 47 indentations leading into eternity. The shogun receives the report that evening. All 46 are accounted for. One, as you may recall, died en route and was buried quietly. He is still counted among you. And now the debate begins anew, not in secret rooms but in open memory. Was the punishment just? Was this the kind of Bushido the world should revere or fear? But the people? The people have already decided. They begin visiting Sengakuji Temple in quiet processions, lighting incense, leaving offerings. Bits of rice. Folded prayers. A child's toy sword carved from pine. The Rōnin are buried beside their master. Together again. Some believe your spirits walk side by side into the next world. Others say you lingered for years, pacing the temple grounds, watching visitors whisper your names in reverence. Now here's one last curious footnote from this chapter. Within months, certain members of the government, not officially of course, began requesting portraits of the Rōnin to hang in private study halls. And yes, one particularly eccentric lord commissioned a full-scale diorama of the raid using painted clay figurines, complete with tiny buckets of sand and all. So you become art. Memory. You, who once pretended to be broken, are now carved into the backbone of Japan's soul. And the snow as always keeps falling. It's been weeks since your final bow, yet somehow the city still whispers your name. Oishi. Or Yasabai. All 47, chiseled into the icy walls of Edo's imagination. Not by decree, not by monuments, but by mouth. By story. By candlelit corners of sake bars where men and women recount your raid in hushed tones, as though saying it too loud might summon your ghosts. Not that anyone would mind. You've gone from fugitives to folk heroes in less time than it takes a pine tree to sprout a new needle. But you're gone. And now your plan, 2 years of strategy, secrecy, and silent promises, keeps unfolding without you. In the shadow of Sengakuji Temple, the graves sit side by side. Your master, Asano Naganori, at the center, and the 47 who followed him in a perfect half-moon around him. Not a defensive ring. Not a wall. Just a quiet embrace. Visitors come daily now. Some bow. Some weep. A few just stand and breathe. But all of them leave something. Incense. Coins. A handful of snow shaped into a crude blade. One merchant, according to a passing monk, visited 3 times and left behind a tiny rice ball each time. For the journey, he'd say. Even in the afterlife, samurai apparently need snacks. But what's astonishing, what no one expected, is how your revenge, so precisely carried out, begins to forge something stranger than justice. It becomes legend. And legends, as you know, don't stay clean. Enter the forgers, the playwrights, the performers. Within a month, stories about the raid are being passed from town to town. Not all of them true. One version claims you descended from the rooftops like snow spirits. Another says Kira was struck down not by a sword but by the sheer force of your leader's scream. Historians still argue whether you even yelled during the attack. Probably not. You're a quiet kind of terrifying. But the real work of myth-making is happening in secret. Behind shoji screens and bamboo curtains, a kabuki troupe rehearses something scandalous. Chishingura. It's a new play. Dramatized. Stylized. Technically not about you at all. Wink wink. But let's be honest, everyone knows it's a thinly veiled retelling of your revenge. To avoid censorship they change the names. Oishi becomes Uranosu. Asano becomes Enya. Kira turns into Morineo. The shogun? Nowhere to be found. But the audience knows. They always know. The first performance takes place miles away from Edo, in a remote village theater. No government officials. Just farmers, merchants, wandering monks, and they eat it up. The silence before the raid. The snowy vengeance. The white robes. The death poems. It's all there, polished and exaggerated until even you might not recognize yourself. And yet it feels true. It spreads like wildfire. Within a year, Chishingura is the most famous play in Japan. But remember, this all happens underground. The Bakufu has officially banned all depictions of your raid, worried it will inspire more acts of vigilante justice. And that's the catch. Your story doesn't just entertain. It agitates. Samurai in distant provinces begin muttering about loyalty. Merchants talk about the price of honor. Even peasants, who couldn't afford a wakizashi if they sold their homes, start using your names like spells. Oishi becomes shorthand for loyalty. Asano for righteous anger. Kira? For cowardice wrapped in silk. The Bakufu isn't thrilled. They send inspectors to theaters. Plays are shut down. Actors arrested. Scripts burned. But every time the government stamps out a version of the tale, 3 more appear in its place. More poetic, more rebellious, more dramatic. And here's your quirky tidbit for tonight. One rogue puppet troupe tried to perform the entire raid using mice in costumes. That's right. Tiny paper swords. Little white coats. They were shut down before the second act, but witnesses say it was shockingly moving, especially the death scene. Meanwhile, scholars begin quietly analyzing the meaning of your actions. Not out loud, of course. That would be a career-ending move. But in coded essays and obscure poetry they ask, was this the perfect act of Bushido? Or the final gasp of a dying tradition? Because here's the thing, Japan is changing. The samurai class isn't what it used to be. Trade is booming. Merchants, who technically rank below samurai, are gaining more wealth and influence. The rigid hierarchy of feudal Japan is beginning to twitch. Just a little. And then there's you, 47 warriors who defied the law, upheld honor, and died with dignity. You didn't just kill a man. You made a statement. Some see it as romantic. Others see it as terrifying. And in the middle, the shogun. Tokugawa Tsuneyoshi, often called the dog shogun for his bizarre animal protection laws, is deeply conflicted about your tale. On one hand, you disobeyed his orders. On the other, your loyalty is exactly what he claims to stand for. It's a paradox wearing sandals. Historians still argue whether Tsuneyoshi ordered your seppuku out of anger or respect. Some say he cried afterward. Others say he grumbled, fools, glorious fools. But whatever he felt, it's too late now. You've escaped his reach. Not physically, you're quite dead, but in a way far more powerful. You've entered memory. The kind that doesn't need temples or monuments. Just voices, stage lights, footsteps in the snow. And the myth keeps changing. In some versions, Chikara takes your place after death, becoming a new kind of hero. In others, you rise from the grave and haunt cowards until they fix their posture. One version claims that all 47 of you were offered reincarnation as hawks, flying eternally over AKO. You like that one. But even the facts begin to warp. Were there really 47? Or was it 46 and a half? Some claim one man abandoned the plan before the attack, only to return later and be forgiven. Others say a secret 48th Rōnin remained in hiding, carrying the full story in a hidden scroll. No scroll has ever been found. But that hasn't stopped the novels, the manga, the late-night TV dramatizations. And if you squint through the centuries, you'll notice the same image returning again and again. A man in white. A snowy street. A blade unsheathed not in fury, but in silence. You never spoke during the raid. That's what makes it echo louder than anything. And now, long after your bones have turned to dust, that silence continues. Not as absence, but as presence. as gravity, as legend. The wind bites deeper tonight. You stand beneath a thinning crescent moon, its curved light just enough to sharpen the snow's edges into a world of soft shadows and silver teeth. The others gather quietly behind you, 46 silhouettes moving like smoke across frozen ground. No armor, no banners, no fanfare. Just worn sandals, layered robes, and blades kept so clean they practically hum when drawn. You're Oishi again. No more masked, no more pretending. The moment is here. The garden wall of Kira's estate rises before you, frosted and still. The street is silent. The city sleeps, unaware that history is about to get a foot shoved right into its ribs. You nod once. That's all it takes. The men fan out. Like the ticking of a hidden clock, each piece begins to move exactly where it's supposed to. 2 men climb over the wall near the rear entrance. 3 more slide toward the side door. 1 posts himself across the street, disguised as a sleepy drunk, just in case any patrol guards come snooping. And you? You move toward the main gate where your son Chikara stands beside you. 17 years old, face set like stone, fingers twitching ever so slightly near his sword hilt. He looks like you did once, before the burden, before the plan. It's almost cruel that this is the night he becomes a man. You place your hand gently on his shoulder. Watch me, you whisper. Then do better. He doesn't nod. He just watches. The signals go out. A loud knock at the front gate. Then a crashing sound, Horib and his team slamming the makeshift battering ram against the heavy wooden doors. The guards inside stir. Confused. Groggy. Not drunk but close enough. They scramble for weapons. Too late. Boom. 1 hinge cracks. Boom. A scream. Boom. The door gives way. Team 1 surges forward. Inside, lanterns flicker awake. Curtains are torn aside. You hear the clamor of armored feet, rusty, unpracticed. Kira's guards weren't expecting this, not after a year of silence. They thought you'd moved on. Some probably thought you were dead. And now, they wish you were. You slip inside the breach. Snow now trampled and stained beneath your feet. The walls echo with the hiss of drawn blades, the grunts of impact, the clash of steel against steel. But your men aren't wild. They're not here to cause chaos. They're here to finish a story. You duck into a side corridor, glancing at your map once more, etched carefully into your memory after months of surveillance. You know where Kira's bedroom is supposed to be. You also know he's probably moved. Kira was always a rat in robes, paranoid, slippery, allergic to straightforward confrontation. So while Team 1 engages the bulk of his guards, you lead Team 2 through the rear garden path. Snow crunches beneath your tabi socks, and the bamboo creaks under frost. And this is where the myth begins to smell real. A legend says one of your men found a guard mid-run, trembling in his nightclothes. He dropped his weapon and pleaded, "I have 5 children, and not one of them ever served Kira." The Rōnin paused, then knocked the man out cold instead of killing him. The kind of mercy that doesn't make it into most revenge fantasies. But you allowed it. This wasn't about bloodlust. This was about balance. You press forward, deeper into the house. Paper walls slide away. Shadows lurch. You pass rooms once filled with idle gossip and court flattery, now torn apart by shouts and steel. And then, finally, you find it. A small door at the end of a corridor. No lantern outside. No guards. Just the muffled sound of someone breathing too fast behind rice paper screens. You signal to the 2 closest men. You slide the door open. And there, huddled in silk and shame, is Kira Yashinaka. His face is ghostly, the thin scar from Lord Asano's blade still slicing his cheek like a crack in porcelain. His hair is undone. His eyes are wide. And in that moment, he's not a nobleman. He's not a target. He's just a man who has known for months that this night would come. He doesn't speak. You kneel before him, calmly, formally, and present him with a blade, the one Asano never got to use in the palace. You place it on a lacquered tray, bow, and speak the offer, "Die with honor. Die as a samurai." Kira stares at the blade, then back at you, then at the floor, and he says, nothing. The silence stretches so long it becomes its own kind of speech. Finally, one of your men steps forward. His name is Yoshida. He does what must be done. 1 clean cut. The room is still. You take Kira's head and wrap it carefully in white cloth. Not roughly. Not as a trophy. As proof. As justice. As closure. The head is placed into a wooden bucket, sealed tight and carried with reverence. You give the order, withdraw. Your men obey, moving as quickly and quietly as they arrived. Not every guard is dead. A few were spared. You left no fires burning, no houses pillaged, no innocents harmed. Only one thing missing from the estate when dawn comes: the man whose cowardice sparked the fall of a noble house. And here's a weird little detail. One of the servants, still dazed, apparently offered you tea on the way out. Out of fear, out of custom, who knows? You declined but thanked him. Because manners matter, even in the aftermath of a blood-drenched honor quest. Outside, the snow continues to fall. The city hasn't woken yet. The 47 of you regroup silently, the bucket carried between you like a sacred relic. It's heavier than it looks. Not physically but symbolically. Every step you take echoes a promise made 2 winters ago, back when your lord's blood stained a lonely mat under a different sky. You walk through the slumbering streets of Edo, past shops, over bridges, beneath lanterns still swaying in the wind. No one stops you. No one dares. You walk like men with nothing left to lose. Because it's true. At the gates of Sengakuji, the temple doors open without a word. You bow to the priest, present the head, place it at the foot of Lord Asano's grave, and then you kneel. All 47. A priest begins to chant softly, not for Kira but for you. A moment that once lived only in intention now lives in action. And the snow covers everything. Even the bucket. Even the sins. Even you. Midnight holds its breath. The rooftops of Edo glisten with a fresh coat of snow, each flake falling like a slow drumbeat. You step forward and the air tenses with you. No bird calls. No dogs barking. Just the hush of something about to break. The gate creaks open beneath the battering ram's final blow, a sound more like splintering ribs than wood. Inside, Kira's mansion yawns open, lanterns flaring awake, shadows leaping across polished floors, voices crying out in confusion. The attack has begun. You Oishi move with precision, your footsteps near soundless against the corridor's tatame. The others are already inside. Horaibe's team spreads like spilled ink across the eastern wing, methodically neutralizing guards. You hear the clash of steel, a strangled yell, then silence. Again. Your men don't shout. They don't charge. They arrive, like a long-delayed storm. Remember that sake seller from a few sections back? The one who opened a shop near Kira's estate as part of your plan? Turns out he's your map. 4 weeks, he traced the comings and goings of every servant, guard, and nighttime visitor. He learned where the weak walls were. Which corners never held patrols. Even which floorboards creaked if you stepped too far left. Thanks to him, this mansion is more familiar to you now than your own. You're not raiding blind. You're enacting a map you've already walked in your mind. The rear garden is silent as you pass. The stone lanterns glint with frost. Bamboo rustles faintly in the wind, swaying just enough to mimic motion, and make every step tense. You don't know yet that some of your men are facing real resistance just 2 wings away. Kira's guards, caught off guard but not wholly untrained, have regrouped at the western annex. There, in a cramped hallway full of priceless scrolls and incense jars, blades clash with chaotic precision. Yasabai is there. He's breathing hard, sword raised, a shallow gash on his forearm that stings more from the cold than pain. 2 of Kira's men are down. A third lunges forward. Yasabai dodges, counters, and ends it. He doesn't stop to reflect. He keeps moving. The goal isn't to fight, it's to end. Meanwhile, you've breached the inner sanctum. The scent of cedar and candle wax thickens. This is the old part of the estate, more opulent, more insulated. Kira's world of paper screens and lacquered floors. You find the decoy room first. It's laid out with all the signs of a sleeping lord. Futon, robe, sandals placed neatly by the door. But the futon is empty. The coals in the brazier are cold. This isn't a bedroom. It's a bluff. You pause. Your breath curls in the air. Then you glance up. A paper lantern swings, ever so slightly. Not from wind. From motion. He's close. You double back. A small corridor near the kitchens. There, behind a panel, half open. A servant darts out, nearly colliding with your chest. His eyes go wide. He drops to his knees, hands shaking. He's in the storehouse, the man whispers. No bribe. No threat. Just panic. Kira's fear has soaked so deeply into his household that even his own staff want him gone. You nod once. Spare the man. And head for the storehouse. Meanwhile, outside the main hall, one of your youngest men, Kataroka, is limping. He took a blow to the knee, slipped on the ice in the garden. He's bleeding but refuses to stop. He tightens a strip of cloth around his leg, mutters something about dying standing up, and limps forward. Just a few meters ahead, Chikara waits. Your son. He spots Kataroka. Moves to help. Tadoroka waves him off. This is yours too, he says. Chikara nods, tightens his grip on his blade, and presses on. By now, most of the guards are down. The front team has secured the gate. The estate is surrounded. No one in, no one out. You arrive at the storehouse. It's locked from the inside, a desperate measure. The door is old, swollen slightly from winter's moisture. You knock once. Yashinaka, you say, using Kira's name without honorific. Silence. Come out. You know what this is. Still nothing. You give the nod. Two men bring up a pry bar and wedge the door open. It groans like a dying ox. You peer inside. He's there, wrapped in blankets, knees tucked up to his chest, face slack with fear. It's not the image you expected. He's thinner, paler, and far older than he looked last time. His eyes meet yours. For a moment, you see the full picture. Not a villain, not a monster, just a man so consumed by status that he forgot what a blade felt like. You step forward, kneel, and offer him a blade. One last chance to reclaim a shred of dignity, to die the way a samurai should. He says nothing. The blanket trembles. You lower your gaze. You give the signal. It's done quickly, cleanly. The head is wrapped in white silk and placed carefully into the bucket brought for this moment. It's not just a trophy. It's an ending. You carry it yourself. Outside, your men have begun gathering in the courtyard. A quick head count. 1 man dead. Several injured. But your mission, is complete. You begin the march to Sengakuji. It's silent. No chants. No cheers. Just footsteps in snow. The city is still asleep. You pass alleys, bridges, and merchant stalls not yet open. A dog barks, then falls quiet. Somewhere, a drunkard stumbles home from a brothel, sees you and freezes in place. Later, he'll say he saw ghosts. He's not entirely wrong. The temple gates open before dawn. A monk already awake bows low. He's heard. You place the bucket at Lord Asano's grave. You kneel. The others follow. One by one. The priest lights incense. He begins to chant. Your shoulders relax for the first time in 2 years. And for the first time since Asano's death, you feel the weight of duty lift. Only the weight of the snow remains. The head rests at Lord Asano's grave, cradled in white silk, nestled beside the incense and candlelight. It doesn't scream. It doesn't plead. It doesn't even matter anymore. Not really. Because this moment isn't for Kira. It's for you. The Rōnin kneel around the grave, blades sheathed, shoulders lowered in reverence. 46 living men, and one already gone, laid to rest in motion somewhere between Kira's estate and this hallowed ground. You do not speak. Words cheapen this. This is the language of silence, of breath visible in the cold morning, of justice folded carefully and set beside the dead. And yet, the silence isn't empty. It's full. Brimming with the weight of every night you waited, every hour you deceived the world into believing you'd moved on. This is what a promise looks like after it's fulfilled, not bright and loud, but heavy and quiet. You bow low, and when you rise it's done. But outside the temple gates, the city of Edo stirs. Word spreads faster than any courier. By the time the sun peaks over the horizon, shopkeepers are already whispering, "Did you hear? They did it." The AKO Rōnin took Kira's head. And unlike the sanitized court reports or censored kabuki plays, these whispers are raw. They stormed the mansion. In the snow. Not one ran. Not even the boy. People gather at street corners, mouths wrapped in scarves, exchanging what little they know. Most have never met a samurai. Some have never even seen a sword unsheathed. But this they feel. It vibrates through the city like a temple bell after midnight. And as you and your men remain at Sengakuji, quietly waiting for judgment, the crowds begin to arrive. At first just a few, then dozens, then hundreds. They bring offerings. Not just incense and coins, but fresh rice, sake, origami cranes, scraps of poetry written in clumsy brushstrokes. One woman lays down her wedding kimono. No one knows who she is, but the gesture leaves everyone staring in reverent silence. It's the strangest funeral you've ever not been dead for. Even stranger? The government does nothing. At first. Because now the shogun's advisors have a dilemma, and it's a knot they didn't see coming. Legally what you've done is murder. Treason even. A deliberate, planned assassination of a court official. But publicly? You're legends already. And here's where the political drama kicks in. Inside Edo Castle, the Bakufu debates endlessly. Advisors gather around scrolls, some pounding the table, others speaking in soft, exhausted voices. If we punish them harshly, One says, the people will revolt, not with swords but with sentiment. They'll call us cowards. Hypocrites. Another counters, if we don't punish them we undermine our own authority. Anyone who feels slighted by justice will think vengeance is permissible. Historians still argue whether the shogun, Tokugawa Tsuneyoshi himself, actually wept when he heard the full story. A few records claim he said, "They were better samurai than those who serve me now." Others say he muttered, "Honor does not change the law." Either way the result is the same. You receive word. You and your 46 brothers will be allowed the dignified death of seppuku. No public executions. No shameful parade. You are, in the eyes of the law, still criminals. But in the hearts of the people, you are already something else entirely. The city swells with conflict. Some citizens call for pardons. Others call for statues. A few particularly zealous poets begin referring to you as the 47 phoenixes, though no one really understands what that means, especially since phoenixes don't usually commit ritual suicide. But this new tension isn't just emotional, it's political. Other daimyo start sending veiled messages to Edo Castle. Some support the punishment. Others question it, warning that such harshness might discourage loyalty altogether. If this is how loyal samurai are treated, one lord writes, then what incentive do mine have to serve with such devotion? It's the sort of veiled threat that keeps shogunate advisors up at night. And in the meantime you sit. Not idly. You clean your blade. You write your final poem. You eat the simplest meals of your life, rice, pickles, and silence. And as you do, something else unfolds outside the walls. A wave of imitation. Young men across the country begin forming their own brotherhoods. Not to avenge anyone. Not to kill. Just to pledge themselves to a cause with the kind of devotion you've shown. Call it cosplay. Call it confusion. Call it cultural shift. But now, everyone wants to be like the 47. Even merchants begin incorporating your story into sales pitches. This tea, says one seller, the kind the Rōnin might have sipped before their final march. Quirky tidbit of the day? One hairdresser in Kyoto begins offering the oishi cut, a disheveled, wild beard look inspired by your months in disguise. It doesn't catch on, but the attempt is admirable. Meanwhile, back at Sengakuji you prepare. The head has been properly buried now, sealed beneath a stone marker next to your lord. You didn't just avenge him. You returned him to dignity. To balance. You made good on the code that everyone assumed had faded into ceremony and empty ritual. Chikara visits once more. He doesn't cry. But he bows lower than ever before. You press a note into his palm. He opens it after you're gone. It reads, "Live longer than me. And cleaner." And now you wait. Not for the punishment. Not even for the end. You wait for the morning. Because when it comes, you will kneel. You will draw your blade. And you will show the world that even in death, the samurai still remember how to finish what they started. The procession moves like smoke, slow, quiet, and full of final purpose. You carry the bucket yourself. Its wooden slats creak faintly, softened by a wrap of white linen stained faintly where the blood once was warm. Inside rests the head of Kira Yashinaka. No longer a lord. No longer feared. Just wait. Weight you've been carrying for over a year in spirit and now for a few frozen miles in your hands. The other Rōnin walk behind you 2 by 2 like monks in formation. No one speaks. There is no song, no battle chant, no wild cries of triumph. Only the sound of sandals brushing snow and the soft breath of men who have spent their lives waiting for this exact moment, and now don't quite know what to do with it. You approach the gates of Sengakuji Temple. A monk stands outside, lantern in hand. He bows low. Doesn't ask a question. Doesn't need to. He knows. They all know. Word has moved faster than any official courier. It always does. You step into the temple grounds and everything slows. The snow deepens here, piling around ancient gravestones and bare tree limbs like the earth is trying to blanket the past itself. Lanterns flicker along the eaves. Somewhere in the back, a wind chime trembles, though there's no wind. You kneel. The bucket rests in front of Lord Asano's grave. This is the moment. The heartbeat of everything. You lower your forehead to the cold stone and whisper something no one else can hear. Maybe it's, "We did it." Maybe it's, "Forgive me." Maybe it's nothing at all. The head is placed beside the grave. Justice complete. Not vengeance. Justice. You step back and the others follow your lead. Each man bows in turn. Some leave offerings. Coins, scraps of poetry, an old hachimaki headband still stained from a skirmish at the mansion. One man lays down the wooden block he used to breach the estate's garden gate. Another unsheathes his wakizashi, kisses the blade and lays it flat in the snow. There's a profound awkwardness here, not because anyone doubts what was done but because no one quite knows what comes next. You didn't plan beyond this. It was never about what came after. It was about getting here. And now that you're here, Edo suddenly feels very large, very quiet, and very uncertain. The priests usher you into the guest hall. They feed you warm rice, miso soup, and sake so hot it steams in the chilled air. You eat in silence, every sip and bite a little more surreal than the last. Across from you, Horide mutters, "This is the first time I felt warm since AKO." Yasabai chuckles. "You look terrible." "Good." The room softens. And then, you wait. For the verdict. The city beyond the temple gates is swirling with rumors. Crowds have begun to gather, not in protest but in vigil. People lighting incense on street corners. Families bringing their children to sit outside the temple walls just to be close to the place where something incredible happened. It's not a spectacle. It's reverence. But the government doesn't see it that way. Inside Edo Castle, the Bakufu is panicking. You've just rewritten the rules, publicly, powerfully, and with undeniable precision. You've proven that loyalty can't be legislated out of existence. And that's dangerous. Some advisors want immediate execution. Public, they say. Decisive. Make them examples. Others argue for mercy. What kind of country punishes men for loyalty? One retainer whispers. The shogun, Tokugawa Tsuneyoshi, listens in silence. He's not a fool. He knows the laws you broke. He also knows the laws you upheld, the unspoken ones, the ones that form the spine of Bushido. He delays the verdict. For weeks. And in that silence, the people begin to speak louder. Pamphlets are copied by hand, passed around in market alleys and tea houses. One reads, "They did not ask for reward. They asked for righteousness." Another claims a comet appeared the night of the raid, a sign they say that the gods themselves approve. Now here's your quirky footnote of the night. A theater troupe in Osaka stages a shadow play, just silhouettes behind a rice paper screen, retelling your entire mission. Not a word spoken. Just shadows, music, and the gasp of the audience when the head is finally revealed. The government shuts it down after 3 shows. Too late. The myth has caught fire. Back at the temple, your men write letters. Farewells to wives, children, brothers. Even apologies to old enemies. One Ronin writes to his dog. No, really, asking that it be fed from his rice bowl one last time. You Oishi write one final poem. Our Lord sleeps in peace. Beneath winter's quiet veil. We follow with grace. And finally the verdict arrives. Not a public spectacle. Not a mass execution. But seppuku. Dignified. Private. As befits samurai. It's a punishment, yes, but one laced with respect. The message is clear. You broke the law but honored the code. We must punish the first. But we bow to the second. You and your men bow in return. No complaint. No resistance. The preparations begin. Each of the daimyo who had been assigned to house you during this waiting period receives the order. And here's the strange part. Most of them cry when they read it. These lords, these proud warriors, these high-ranking men of power, weep. Because they've come to admire you, respect you, even love you in some quietly poetic way. One writes in his diary, "I have never known men like these. I hope never to again. My heart could not bear it." On the morning of your seppuku, the city stills. Shops open late. Roads empty. A kind of hush falls over Edo, not enforced, not demanded, but born from the shared understanding that today, something ancient is closing its eyes for the last time. You kneel in a bright room with tatami mats and paper screens painted with pine branches and cranes. The blade rests before you. You breathe. And wait. But that's for tomorrow. Tonight you sleep one last time. And somewhere in your dreams, Asano nods once, just once, and turns to face the snow. You wake to soft light filtering through the shoji screens, casting long, paper-thin shadows that sway like reeds in water. The floor is warm beneath you. Someone's lit the brazier early. You stretch your fingers, feel your heartbeat in your ribs, and realize with quiet clarity, this is your last morning. There's no panic. No dread. Just a steady calm, like you've reached the last page of a long letter you've read 100 times. Outside, Edo is still. Not silent, never truly silent, but respectful. As if even the wind knows not to blow too hard today. As if the city, in its strange way, is bowing along with you. You sit with your men one final time. Breakfast is rice, pickles, and miso, simple, warm, enough. One Ronin jokes that it's the best miso he's had in 2 years. Another replies, It should be. You're not paying for it. You laugh. Not a big laugh, but one of those soft, full-bodied ones that says, we're still here and somehow we're okay. You write your final letters. To your son, Chikara, be kind when it costs you. Be silent when it hurts. And remember that your father died content. To the monks at Sengakuji, bury me facing Asano. Let my silence keep him company. To the Bakufu, thank you for the dignity of a samurai's end. And then, robes straightened, blades cleaned, you kneel. One by one, the Rōnin are summoned to separate rooms across 4 different daimyo estates. Each host performs the ritual with solemn reverence. No interruptions, no soldiers. Just the Rōnin, their blade, and a second to deliver the mercy stroke. It begins. The first man, quietly prepared, slices across his belly in a clean, practiced line. His second, chosen by friendship or family, strikes true. One clean cut. One bow. Done. Then the next. And the next. Each death is a whisper, not a scream. A choice, not a punishment. Outside, the cherry trees are bare, their limbs slick with melted snow. Not quite spring. Not quite winter. A season in transition, fitting. And here's the strange part. Some witnesses claim that a faint scent of plum blossoms filled the air that day, even though plum season hadn't started. Poetic memory? Collective hallucination? Historians still argue whether there were blossoms planted nearby. But the image sticks. Blood and blossoms mingling on a crisp morning. You oishi are among the last. You kneel on a new tatami mat, your white death robes arranged just so. Your blade rests before you, gleaming softly in the light. Your second, a man named Maze, stands behind you, hands steady, tears silent. You look once at the ink brush beside the blade, then at the sky through the open screen. And then you draw. The blade cuts clean. The second stroke is swift. You fall forward, no flailing, no sound, like a pine bowing beneath snow. It's done. When the last man has fallen, the silence hangs heavy. The daimyo overseeing the rites lower their heads. Even the guards, trained to remain impassive, pause. The bodies are prepared with care. The monks at Sengakuji receive each one with reverence. 46 caskets arrive at the temple gates that evening. They are placed beside Lord Asano's grave, just as requested. The temple grounds now hold an entire legacy beneath the earth. You and your men encircling your master in eternal watch. News of your deaths travels fast, and strangely with a kind of hush, as if the city understands not to shout. Some weep. Some kneel outside the temple and light incense. A few leave small wooden plaques with your names, hand-carved in simple characters. And here's the quirky detail that sticks tonight. One farmer walks 50 miles to place a single lotus blossom at the foot of Oishi's grave. When asked why, he says, he didn't know me, but he reminded me what men could be. Not warriors. Not killers. Just men. Honest. Unflinching. Oh. In the months that follow, the story changes form. It moves through scrolls, puppet plays, ink paintings. Banned and reborn again and again. Because no matter how often the Bakufu tries to control the tale, it keeps sprouting back up like bamboo. Stronger, wilder, less obedient. People begin using your names in prayers. Children are named Oishi. Tea shops rename blends in your honor. One swordsmith creates a ceremonial dagger engraved with the phrase, 47 truths. He only makes 3. They vanish into the hands of quiet collectors, passed down through generations. But the shogunate? It doesn't last. Not because of you, but you helped. Because your story forced Japan to remember what Bushido meant before it became theater. You peeled the lacquer off the old codes and showed what they looked like underneath. Bloody, poetic, disciplined, and disturbingly human. You reminded them that honor isn't a pose, it's a decision. That loyalty isn't loud, it's quiet. And long. And sometimes it ends with your knees in the snow, offering your death like a wrapped gift to a man who's already gone. You are the Rōnin of Akeo. Not rebels. Not martyrs. Just 47 answers to a question no one dared to ask out loud. Does justice still exist? And in answering, you became something far harder to erase than a man. You became a myth. The shogun hasn't slept well in weeks. Inside Edo Castle, Tokugawa Tsunayoshi stares at a stack of reports, each one repeating the same maddening reality. The people adore the Rōnin. They admire them, mourn them, worship them almost. The official line is clear. They were criminals. Murderers who took the law into their own hands. And yet, outside the walls of power, the streets are painting a different picture. Shrines have gone up in their honor. Small ones. Unofficial. Carved by carpenters and stonecutters who never met you but feel like they knew you. Even in the countryside, where news travels slower, Farmers tie little white cloths to trees and mutter your names before planting seeds. Justice, it seems, has rooted itself in soil the Bakufu can't reach. So what does a government do when the public canonizes its criminals? Tsuneyoshi walks alone through his inner garden, snow melting in quiet puddles under his feet. His dog, a sprightly creature with fur too clean for such cold weather, pads along beside him. You'd find it amusing, this symbol of absolute authority standing still, brow furrowed, defeated not by armies but by memory. Inside, his advisors argue. Some push for erasure. Let them fade, one suggests. No names and records. Let the wind take them. Another says, embrace the myth. Co-opt it. If the people must love them, let us control how. The third, oldest among them, simply mutters, they've already won. Historians still argue what the shogun truly felt. Was he moved by the Ronin's sacrifice or infuriated by their popularity? Did he see the strength of their loyalty or only the threat to his rule? The surviving documents offer little. Just court records. Half-hearted memorials. And the one line he wrote in the margin of a report, justice obeys no man. Meanwhile, the Ronin's graves at Sengakuji have become a pilgrimage site. You'd think that sort of thing would take years. Decades maybe. No, it takes days. Carpenters travel from far provinces to see where Oishi was buried. Poets squat in the snow, scribbling verses on rice paper that disintegrates in the wind before they can finish the final line. Even rival samurai arrive quietly at night, leaving offerings without announcing themselves. One leaves behind his daisho, both swords. A message that says simply, they've already done what we all feared to try. You become more than memory. You become reckoning. And here comes the paradox. The Ronin were executed as criminals, yet their graves are tended as if they were saints. This confuses everyone. So the Bakufu does what bureaucracies always do when faced with emotional chaos. They form a committee. An official delegation is dispatched to Sengakuji to evaluate whether the temple is becoming a site of political disorder. What they find instead are children leaving tiny rice balls and folded notes that say things like, I will be brave like Oishi. So, not exactly an uprising, but something even harder to suppress, reverence. And here's the wildest detail. One of the advisors on that committee cried. He didn't admit it, of course, but the monks saw him pause at the grave, cover his face, and stand there far longer than necessary. When asked later what had moved him, he whispered, they didn't hide. That's what killed me. They didn't hide. Let's zoom out for a moment. Japan in 1703 is not a land of easy transitions. The feudal structure is rigid, codified, enforced. Samurai are supposed to obey, duty above all. Justice flows down from the top, like a river that doesn't care what gets swept away. But you didn't follow the river. You dammed it, then redirected it. And in doing so you exposed the flaw, that honor and law don't always align. The shogun could let you live and weaken his laws, or let you die and weaken his image. In choosing the second, he may have kept the system intact, but the legend? That belongs to you. Now let's talk about those unopened letters. In the days leading up to the final order, the Ronin sent out messages, 47 in total, written to old mentors, family members, former allies, even distant retainers of the Asano household. Each letter bore the same seal, the broken crest of the AKO clan. Some of those letters were never opened. Too painful. Too final. But others were read and preserved. And inside were not war cries but confessions. Questions. Quiet hopes that history would remember them kindly. Oishi's letter to Chikara is perhaps the most famous. Son, do not wear my name like a flag. Wear it like a thread. Let it hold your heart together, not tighten your grip. Another reads, if we are wrong, let the snow cover us and forget. But if we are right, let the snow preserve our footprints. These letters would resurface decades later, rediscovered in temple vaults and family storage boxes. Each one a fragment of the real story, less romantic, more human. Which brings us to the strangest wrinkle of all. The Ronin's death created a vacuum. Across the land, people expected the shogun to now redefine the samurai code. Clarify things. Publish new edicts. Something. Anything. But the Bakufu did nothing. What? Because the Ronin had done the impossible. They made the system feel incomplete. How do you codify a moment that exists outside law? You can't. So the system absorbed it. Let the plays happen. Quietly allowed woodblock prints to circulate. Stopped enforcing the ban on Shishingura. Just like that, the state shifted from suppression to tolerance. It couldn't erase the Ronin, so it licensed them. And that, perhaps, is the final irony. You were killed for loyalty. and then celebrated for it. You were buried as criminals, and then worshipped as heroes. You proved that the greatest power doesn't lie in the blade or the scroll or the title. It lies in the act. The moment you step forward when everyone else stands still. The moment you say, "No, I won't forget." That's what they remembered. That's why the shogun couldn't sleep. And that's why, centuries later, your names are still whispered, not in fear but in reverence. The ink dries slowly on the paper in your lap. The strokes are clean, the characters balanced, every kanji standing firm like a row of silent soldiers. You lift the brush, pause, and close your eyes for a moment, because this letter, like the others, will never be answered. You're one of the 47, and you've survived long enough to know what that means. Your blade is polished. Your poem is written. Your heart has stopped chasing peace because it already made its decision months ago. But in this final quiet, just before the ritual is complete, you reach for a brush instead of steel. Because the truth is, samurai die with more than just blood. They die with words. And so do you. Your letter isn't poetic. It doesn't use flowery phrases or ancient proverbs. It's simple. To my wife, there is no anger in my chest. Only a full moon. I hope your next husband laughs more than I did. You fold it carefully. Place it beside your small cup of tea. Then you return to your seat and you wait. All across Edo, the others are doing the same. But what's interesting, what history never really lingers on, is what these men do in their final hours. Before the blade. After the mission. When there's nothing left to hide and no mask left to wear. Some laugh. One plays the flute. Another pulls out a lacquered box he's been carrying for years, opens it and reveals a tiny wooden carving of Asano. It's rough, childlike, made with no skill but with great love. He sets it beside him like a companion and whispers, "We're going soon." And yes, some of the men weep. Not for themselves. For those they're leaving. For what they'll never see. For the sunrise they won't greet tomorrow. You're not ashamed of that. Bushido isn't about killing emotion. It's about carrying it with dignity. And that's the great myth breaker right there. People think samurai were emotionless blades in human form. They weren't. They were made of heart. They just chose when to show it. Now let's talk about those letters that were never opened. 47 messages. Each one handwritten, folded with care, and sent out just before the end. Some arrived too late. Others were tucked away unread because the recipients couldn't bear to face what they feared they'd find inside. One letter sent to a former comrade began, "If you are reading this, then I am ash. But in my ash, you'll find the path you were too afraid to take." Another, unaddressed, found its way into the possession of a temple scribe. Read, "We have become the ink that remembers the brush. Let that be enough." Historians still argue whether the letters were part of the strategy, to shape legacy in death as much as in life, or if they were simply human gestures. Well, regret, gratitude. But one thing's certain, the letters mattered. Because words linger. And so do footprints. Now, outside the city, in the outer provinces, not everyone even knows your names yet. News spreads slow on horseback. But where it has arrived, it's reshaping things. Young samurai talk of honor again, not as a ritual but as a choice. Older lords, fearful of what your story represents, begin quietly reinforcing loyalty checks within their households. More inspections. More oversight. One paranoid daimyo even dissolves his inner circle and hires a team of Rōnin from the north. A little ironic. Meanwhile, plays keep popping up like weeds. Some tell the story straight. Others twist it into romance or comedy. In one especially strange version, the 47 become fox spirits in disguise, sent from the heavens to punish arrogance. Another casts Kira as a demon whose blood seals a cursed scroll that can only be opened by a sword dipped in snowmelt. Creative? Definitely. Historically accurate? Not even close. But here's the thing. The further your story spreads, the less it belongs to you. It belongs to everyone. And that terrifies those in power. Because stories like yours are hard to control. They sneak in through cracks in the ceiling. They arrive in lullabies and sake-fueled ramblings. They live longer than loss. Which brings us to a curious twist, the case of the 47th Rōnin. Yes, you heard right. See, there was always some confusion around the final number. 46 men committed seppuku after the mission. One died en route. That's 47. But some versions claim that one man, a Rōnin named Terasaka, was sent away just before the attack. His mission? To report the event. To carry the story forward. To be the witness. He lived. Years later, long after the others had become incense smoke in memorial shrines, he returned to Sengakuji. Quietly. Alone. And knelt at the graves of his brothers. Some say he wept. Others say he said nothing at all. And now, scholars debate whether he was brave or cowardly. Was his survival a necessary part of the plan or a failure of nerve? You can almost hear the Rōnin at rest saying, "Who cares? He did what he was asked. And now he carries the silence that the rest of you left behind." Every legend needs one person to live, to remind the world it was real. And then there's the matter of the swords. After your deaths, the daimyo who hosted you returned your personal blades to Sengakuji. They were cleaned, wrapped in silk, and placed in a small armory built beside your graves. Not for use, for memory. Years later, during a rare storm, lightning struck the temple. The swords were unharmed. Some took it as coincidence, others as proof. Quirky footnote of the night? One of the temple monks began lighting incense not only at your graves, but at the armory door, as if the swords themselves had earned a soul. Maybe they had. After all, they were part of the story too. And here you are. Ash now. Bone. Name carved into stone. But you're not gone. Not really. Not with letters still tucked into drawers. Not with poems etched into the backs of fans. Not with tiny statues of Rōnin tucked into travelers' pouches for good luck. You became more than men. You became memory. And that's the sharpest blade of all. The room is bright. Not harshly so, no. This is the kind of brightness that seeps through shoji screens in gentle waves, as if the sun itself is trying to be polite. You sit in the center of it, your knees resting lightly on the woven tatame, the hem of your white death robe folded neatly around you. There is a brazier in the corner, glowing low and steady. Incense curls into the air as soft as memory. You've eaten. You've written. You've spoken your goodbyes. Now you kneel for the last time. A short wakizashi lies in front of you on a small black lacquered tray. Its hilt is wrapped in cord so fine you can feel its weave through your fingertips. You've held this blade before. In training. In reverence. In anger. But never like this. You take a breath. Across the city, your comrades are doing the same, each in a different room, each surrounded by silence and duty. There are no audiences, no dramatic speeches. Just this, a moment between man and blade, between history and choice. You wrap your fingers around the hilt, draw the blade slowly. Cool steel greets your skin. The process is deliberate. Your second, standing behind you, waits for the signal. You've chosen him carefully, not just for skill but for steadiness. This is not a favor. This is trust. You bow once, blade resting on your lap. Then you make the first cut. Across the abdomen, left to right, the traditional path. The pain is instant, deep and blooming, but you keep your jaw shut. No cry. No flinch. Before the pain can rise again, your second strikes. Your head bows forward. You fall. Behind you, your second sheathes his blade, bows low, and steps back into the light. It's over. But only for you. Because in 4 other estates across Edo, 45 more men are doing the same. One. The ritual is identical, but each death is its own private storm. Some men grip the blade too tightly, their fingers white with resolve. Others close their eyes and picture the road to AKO, or the rustle of pine trees near the castle gates. One man, before drawing the blade, simply says, "I hope the snow falls tonight." And oddly enough, it does. Just as the last Rōnin's head is gently lowered to the mat, a flurry begins outside. Not heavy, just enough to dust the roofs. A whisper, not a scream. The seppuku of the 46 is complete by sundown. By morning, Sengakuji receives the bodies. The monks are waiting. The procession is solemn. No banners. No cries. Just caskets wrapped in linen and lowered carefully, reverently, beside Lord Asano's grave. 46 stones will be carved. The 47th, Kataoka, who died of illness before the final raid, already rests there. Together they form a crescent around their lord. A half-moon of loyalty, of sacrifice. You'd think the story ends here. But this is where the story begins to echo. The citizens of Edo don't riot. They don't rebel. But something shifts, quietly, deeply. 4 weeks after the deaths, the temple grounds remain crowded. Farmers, merchants, children, soldiers. Some pray. Some just sit. Some bring sake and pour it gently onto the ground, as if the earth itself might thirst for gratitude. And in the court, the bakufu goes silent. No new edicts are issued. No statements. The silence is deliberate, a pause to let the noise settle. But the noise doesn't settle. Instead, it transforms. One daimyo commissions a private woodblock print of the Rōnin kneeling before their lord's grave. He doesn't display it publicly. It's hung in a back room where only trusted guests are invited to see. But copies are made. And those copies travel. Within a year, copies exist in every major city. That's the strange thing about censorship. It only works when people agree to forget. And no one wants to forget you. You, the men who wore death like a second robe. You, the men who followed justice deeper than fear. You, the men who left no room for maybe. People begin telling the story over meals, over firewood, over sake and sorrow. Even the structure of it, the long delay, the quiet planning, the sudden storm, it's perfectly shaped for myth. That's not your doing. That's the world recognizing its need for a parable. So they make one. Soon, a few temples across Japan begin including prayers for the 47 in their seasonal ceremonies. Not officially, just quietly, as if slipping your names into the wind might help cleanse the air. Now, a light scholarly aside, there's an ongoing debate about the precise mood of the populace following your deaths. Some historians argue that reverence faded quickly, that the novelty wore off, that plays and paintings were the only real legacy. Others insist something deeper took root, that you didn't just affect the public, you changed the expectations of what a samurai could be. And in certain schools, for years after your deaths, sword masters reportedly ended lessons with a single sentence. What would the Rōnin have done? And if you're craving a quirky detail to soften this solemn stretch, here it is. Sometime after the deaths, an enterprising poet printed a haiku series themed around 47 feelings. Each poem described the inner world of one of the Rōnin, from anger to patience to hunger to love. It sold terribly. But a few copies survive, tucked away in dusty archives, proving that even bad poetry can outlive empires. As for Chikara, your son, he doesn't die. He was too young to be ordered to seppuku. The shogun spares him. But not because of mercy. Because of curiosity. What happens when the son of a legend walks free? Chikara disappears for a while. Quietly. Moves out of Edo. Avoids fame. But years later he returns. Becomes a teacher. Not of swordplay, but of ethics. And in one record he's quoted as saying, "My father's blade was sharp, but his silence was sharper. He never marries, never builds a school. But students remember him as kind and tired," which feels appropriate. As the years go on, Sengakuji becomes more than a resting place. It becomes a mirror. People come not just to honor, but to ask, what would I have done? Would I have waited? Would I have knelt? Would I have drawn the blade? Some leave feeling braver. Some just leave quieter. But no one leaves unchanged. The 47 didn't reshape Japan with rebellion or reform. You reshaped it with clarity. You reminded everyone that law is not always justice. And that silence, when chosen, can speak more loudly than protest. And when the snow falls again and the city is once more blanketed in white, the graves at Sengakuji look like nothing special. Just stone. Just names. But if you lean close, if you listen, you'll swear you hear breathing. So, steady. Like a story not quite finished. The morning is gray. Not stormy, not heavy, just quiet. Clouded, like the sky itself is reluctant to open its eyes. It's the kind of morning where nothing feels urgent. And maybe that's the point, because what happens today has waited too long for rushing. You rise. One cut. 47 times. That's what people will remember. The clean symmetry. The devotion carried not by speeches or flags or epic charges, but by a single act repeated like prayer. It's not about how loud you are. It's about how still you can stay when the moment finally arrives. And so, the 47 Rōnin meet death not with fire, but with form. Each one kneels. Each one draws. Each one proves that discipline isn't about power, it's about restraint. You oishi are the center of that stillness. Or were. Because now your body rests beneath temple soil, arms folded, blade cleaned and returned to the earth. You do not speak anymore. But your silence has a shape. It curls around the others as they prepare to follow. And they do follow. Without wavering. In 4 different estates, the men are divided but synchronized. A final act with no rehearsal needed. They've been ready since the day Lord Asano died. The blade is short, wakizashi length. It's ceremonial but still sharp enough to do the job. They kneel on new tatami mats, each man in white, facing forward, knowing precisely what must be done. Some breathe heavily. Some pray under their breath. Some smile. Not wide, not joyfully, just a small, tight curve. The kind that says, at last. And then they begin. One cut, slow and deliberate. Left to right. The pain is not denied. It is honored. Then the second. A chosen companion, a trusted hand, a flash of motion. The head bows. The silence returns. Repeat. Again. And again. You'd think it would feel gruesome. mechanical, like a ritual gone numb. But no, it's intimate, sacred. Some of the daimyo hosting the executions can barely keep watching. Not because of the blood, but because of the calm. This is not despair. This is men who have known all along what their ending would be. And here's something strange. Most of the second cuts are perfect. No hesitation. No fear. Each blade strikes with the grace of friendship. Because seppuku isn't about dying alone. It's about trusting someone to carry your ending when you no longer can. One second reportedly whispered, "Forgive me," just before his blade fell. Not out of guilt, but out of sorrow. That's how deeply these men loved each other. It's hard to find that kind of loyalty in war. Even harder in peace. By sunset, the last blade has fallen. The 47 are gone. But the city doesn't celebrate. It doesn't riot. It doesn't even shout. It listens. Because something sacred just passed through its streets. And the first snowfall of the new year begins. It's light. Silent. Perfect. The kind of snow that doesn't fall. It lands. Like dust returning home. At Sengakuji, the monks prepare the graves. They know the names. They've chanted them. Folded them into prayer beads. Murmured them into smoke. The coffins arrive slowly. Escorted not by armies, but by silence. You are laid to rest with care. With cloth. With rice. With offerings. One monk, as he lowers the last of the caskets, says, "We are burying the memory of courage. May it rise again when needed." And he's right. Because what you did wasn't just revenge. It wasn't even justice. It was reminder. Of loyalty. Of sacrifice. Of a code that isn't written, but lived. Even now, decades later, others come. One woman leaves a silk pouch embroidered with all 47 names. Another brings sweet sake and pours it into the soil. A retired soldier carves your story into a wooden tablet and nails it to a tree just outside the gate, where wind and moss will eventually erase the words, but not the meaning. And here's your fringe detail for tonight. The tree outside the temple, the one closest to your graves, was rumored for years to never lose its leaves. Even in winter. Some called it the guardian tree. Others claimed it was rooted in more than earth. No one knows if the story's true. But that tree stood for over a century. And now we turn to the ones who were left behind. The families. The sons. The lovers. Most never saw the bodies. The daimyo made sure the rites were private, respectful. But word still reached them. One widow shaved her head, donned white robes, and took up residence at a remote temple. Another never remarried. She opened a small calligraphy school instead. Every spring she taught students to write one line. "A blade held still is still a blade." Chikara lived longer than any of them. He never told the story the same way twice. Not because he was trying to obscure it, but because he understood that truth lives in emotion, not detail. Sometimes he would say, "My father smiled at the end." Other times, he wept. Once, he said nothing. And that's when I understood everything. Years later, someone asked him what he believed was the most samurai thing his father ever did. He answered, he listened before speaking. Always. And when Chikara died, they buried him beside Oishi. Not in the circle. Just beside. Not as one of the 47. But as the man who remembered them best. Back in Edo, life goes on. New lords rise. Old houses fall. Swords are carried more for show than for battle. But the memory lingers. In plays. In ink. In snow. And every so often, a boy in a village no one remembers asks, "Who were the 47?" And someone older leans down and says, "They were men who waited. Men who whispered. Men who chose silence when others chose forgetfulness. And when the time came, they rose." That's all. And somehow it's everything. Edo doesn't speak your names as much anymore. The smoke from your seppuku has long since cleared. The swords have been wrapped and stored. The shogunate continues on, its gears grinding forward, but something in the machinery is just slightly off. Something shifted when the blood dried on the tatame, when the snow buried your graves, and when the silence that followed grew louder than anything you ever said in life. Still, even the strongest stories begin to blur at the edges. Years pass, then decades, and eventually, one by one, your names start to dissolve, not from disrespect, but from repetition. People remember the number, not the men. 47. It becomes a symbol, a shape, a drumbeat, a headline carved into the national soul. And yet, in backstreets and bathhouses, in old temples and under rusting gates, a different kind of story continues. The one not found in the plays or the kabuki masks. The one about what came after. Because Kira Yashinaka may have died that snowy night, but something about him never quite stayed buried. They say he lingered. At first it's just whispers. A servant sees a figure in the corner of a ruined estate. A merchant passing by late at night hears a door slam when no one's inside. And one samurai posted near the temple swears that during evening meditation he heard a man sobbing behind the gravestones. When he checked, there was nothing there but a faint patch of frost that hadn't melted like the rest. You might roll your eyes. Samurai weren't supposed to believe in ghosts. But even the toughest blades rust in time. And Edo is a city built on stories as much as stones. Soon, the ghost of Kira becomes an open secret. Not a monster. Not a vengeful spirit. But a presence. Something stuck. The belief spreads that Kira's soul never found peace. Not because he died badly, but because he died dishonored. He didn't perform seppuku. He didn't speak. He didn't even resist. Just curled up like paper in the dark and waited for history to close the book on him. Except it didn't. Because your revenge may have been flawless, but it also broke something ancient. It made people look at justice sideways. Made them ask questions about power and punishment, about what it means to obey when the system doesn't protect the righteous. And that left a crack wide enough for ghosts to creep through. Now here's your historical curveball. A few years after your deaths, a priest at Sengakuji recorded in his journal that a nobleman dressed in white was seen kneeling at Asano's grave, then walking backward into the snow and vanishing. Some claimed it was Kira. Others claimed it was one of you. Either way, the rumor stuck. Soon, stories emerged of travelers passing the temple and feeling suddenly chilled. Or of people waking in nearby inns with a single word in their heads. Why? You might be laughing right now. But your tale, so grounded, so real, had now entered the realm of the supernatural. And in Japan, that's how stories endure. They grow fangs. They grow wings. They slip under doors. And if you think the government could stop this? Not a chance. The Bakufu tried, of course. Issued new bans. Censored new plays. But by this point, the memory of the 47 was like ink in water. Unstoppable. Uncontainable. So the narrative shifted. You stopped being threats. You became guardians. In some regions, people left offerings to you for protection. Not as gods, but as symbols of integrity. A merchant in Kyoto would leave coins at a roadside shrine with 47 tiny pebbles around the base. A mother in a mountain village would whisper your names over her child's fever, praying for strength like Oishi. And then came the legends. They didn't arrive all at once. Just a trickle. But suddenly, there were stories of a spectral Rōnin appearing to save travelers from thieves. Of a white-robed figure standing watch over a temple during a fire. Of an old man who'd whisper strategy to lost samurai in their dreams. Sometimes it was one of you. Sometimes all 47. Even Kira's ghost changed shape in the retellings. Some said he was cursed to walk Edo endlessly, seeking the apology he never gave. Others believed he haunted only his old estate, forever listening for footsteps that would never again storm through the gate. A peculiar fringe account comes from a traveling tinker who stayed at an inn not far from the ruins of Kira's home. He claimed that during the night, he was awoken by a soft knocking on his door. When he opened it, he found no one, but in the hallway, a trail of perfect footprints in fresh snow, even though it hadn't snowed in days. Creepy? Maybe. But you can't deny it makes for a good story. And you know what's stranger? Some people liked the idea of Kira's ghost lingering, because it meant the story wasn't over. Because it meant that justice, real justice, was still walking. And if his spirit was out there, that meant yours must be too. Not in the same places, perhaps. But in the pause before a promise is kept. In the hush before someone draws a line they won't let the world cross. In the moment someone says, enough, this cannot stand. You're there. Not with a blade. Not even with words. But with presence. And that's why years later, when a young playwright began drafting yet another retelling of your tale, he ended it not with your deaths, but with a quiet scene where a child leaves a single white chrysanthemum on an empty stone and walks away without knowing why. Because legacy doesn't need recognition. It just needs memory. Even now, in the quiet corners of modern Tokyo, where Sengakuji still stands, weathered but stubborn, visitors arrive without cameras, without fanfare. They kneel. They offer a prayer. And sometimes, when the wind catches the trees just right, they look up like they've heard something. Something old. Something steady. Something like a promise not yet broken. You've slipped through the centuries. One story sharpened like a blade, honed by time and retold 1,000 different ways. You began as a whisper on a snowy night. Now you're on scrolls and plays, carved into woodblock prints, spun out of brushstrokes and flickering across movie screens. It's been over 300 years since you first knelt at Lord Asano's grave. and somehow you're still kneeling. But you've changed. Not you, the men who died are buried. But the idea of you, the memory, the silhouette, that's mutated like all myths do. Let's start in the 18th century when Chishingura, the dramatized version of your revenge, became the cultural phenomenon. And we're talking big. Whole troops of kabuki actors made careers out of playing oishi. Some even wore the beard in public, just to bask in your ghost spotlight. They turned the story into theater, complete with melodramatic monologues, emotional outbursts, and stylized duels where blades gleamed under lantern light and snow fell from paper machines. It's glorious, and it's not even remotely accurate. You never shouted speeches or struck tragic poses under stage lights. You were quiet, strategic, patient. You disappeared into sake-soaked alleyways and waited like frost. But people didn't want the silence. They wanted the spectacle. So Chishingura gave it to them, again and again and again. And yet, despite the embellishments, the heart of your story pulsed through it all. Loyalty, justice, sacrifice. It didn't matter that the names were changed or that the historical details got swapped out like wardrobe pieces. What mattered was the feeling, the ache of it, the stubborn, human need to believe that honor can still outlive a body. Fast forward to the Meiji Restoration, mid-1800s. Japan is tearing off its samurai robes and suiting up for industrialism. Trains arrive. Guns replace swords. The emperor is back in power, and the shogunate is fading like an old ink painting left in the sun. And yet, the story of the 47 remains. In a time when the samurai are literally being abolished as a class, you'd expect the tale of a bunch of vengeful retainers to go out of style. But no, it explodes. Why? Because your story becomes the eulogy for the old Japan. A way for people to grieve the loss of the old order, but still hold on to its most poetic parts. Your names are whispered not just as warriors, but as symbols of what was good about that world before bureaucracy and modernization boxed it all up. You go from being rebels, to relics, to icons. And then the 20th century rolls in. Everything speeds up. Wars come and go. The sword becomes ceremonial, and loyalty becomes more of a slogan than a sacrifice. But you hang on. Because now you're not just in books and plays, you're in film. The first film adaptation of Chishingura drops in 1910. Silent, grainy, full of wide-eyed gestures and flowing sleeves. Then more come. Dozens. Hundreds. Black and white turns to color. Swords clash in dramatic slow motion. Oishi gets played by every leading actor with a decent chin and a gravitas stare. The snow always falls just right. You're repackaged again and again, new versions, new angles. Some focus on the strategy, others on the politics. One even turns the story into a love triangle. Don't ask. By the 1950s, the tale becomes a kind of cinematic tradition in Japan. It's like Hamlet in the West. Everyone knows how it ends, but we still want to see how this actor will pull off the big moments. Some films make you stoic. Others make you romantic. One even gives Kira a redemption arc, seriously. And here's your fringe detail for tonight. There was a space opera adaptation in the 1970s. Imagine that. 47 Rōnin as rebels on a distant planet, fighting against a galactic overlord named something like Kira Talk. Swords replaced by plasma katanas. Honor in zero gravity. It flopped. Art. But it happened. Because your story by now is more than cultural, it's universal. Strip away the robes and the snow, and it's about standing by something when the world tells you not to. That never goes out of style. And then came the Western adaptations. Books, comics, video games. You became characters with magical swords. Warriors in alternate timelines. Ronin with glowing eyes and tragic backstories. In 2013, Hollywood gave you the big-budget treatment. 47 Rōnin, starring Keanu Reeves. Yes, really? You get dragons, witchcraft, CGI castles, a fictional half-English samurai added to make Western audiences feel at home. It's wild. It's nonsense. And yet, at the very end it gets one thing right. The final scene, your seppuku. So, honorable, reverent. For all the fantasy, they knew how to end it. Quietly. Like the truth always was. That's the funny thing. No matter how much your story gets twisted, commercialized, mutated into manga or modern drama, the end stays the same. You kneel. You die. Not in rage. In peace. And maybe that's why you still last. Because in a world that never stops shouting, your stillness is radical. You aren't remembered because you burned down the palace or killed thousands. You're remembered because you followed through. All the way. Even now, at Sengakuji Temple, tourists from around the world visit your graves. Not out of obligation, but reverence. Some light incense. Some take selfies. Some just stand there, unsure why they feel so heavy all of a sudden. And in the gift shop, you can buy miniature statues of the 47, chopsticks, notebooks, plush dolls. Yes, plush Rōnin. Soft, huggable, mildly absurd, and yet somehow perfect. Because even legends have to pay rent. Even myths need merchandise. But none of that cheapens you. If anything, it proves the opposite. You're still here. Not because the government demanded it, not because a textbook assigned it, but because people kept retelling it. And as long as there's a stage, a screen, or a storyteller left in Japan, or beyond, you'll rise again. Not to take revenge, but to remind us what devotion looks like. Even in silence. Even in snow. Now the city breathes with electricity. Tall towers blink against the clouds. Trains shudder through tunnels like arteries. Neon signs hum, vending machines blink like robot eyes, and everyone walks a little faster than they need to. Tokyo, once Edo, never sleeps. And yet, here you are, buried in the middle of it, quietly resisting the rush. Sengakuji Temple hasn't changed much. Nestled in the Takanawa district, wedged between high-rises and residential streets, it still holds the same crooked pine trees, the soft gravel paths, the little wooden sign that says simply, 47 Rōnin. You can miss it if you're not looking. But people find it. Every day. Every season. And not just the nostalgic elderly or uniformed schoolchildren scribbling notes on clipboards. Office workers come on their lunch break. Soldiers on leave. Tattooed bikers. Young couples who don't really know the story but know enough to feel quiet when they stand before the graves. You oishi lie in the center of them. So, still kneeling. Still watching over Lord Asano. It's been more than 300 years, and the incense hasn't stopped burning. The offerings haven't stopped arriving. Coins. Bottles of sake. Little notes folded in childish hands, scrawled in katakana. Please help me do the right thing. Because somehow, across time, you've become not just samurai, but a moral compass. People don't come here to remember blood. They come here to remember balance. Honor in a world that often forgets how to stand still. And here's something beautifully strange. When the first subway line was dug near the temple, workers reportedly paused the drilling for an hour. Not because of structural issues, but out of respect. They said it didn't feel right to break ground beneath you without silence first. Modern Japan isn't built on samurai code anymore. It's built on deadlines and Wi-Fi and commuter chaos. And yet, walk down a side street, step through the old wooden gate at Sengakuji, and the city drops away. And there you are. All of you. Not roaring. Just waiting. In the spring, the plum blossoms return, same as they always have. In the summer, cicadas scream through the trees while visitors wipe sweat from their brows, pausing to bow before your names. In autumn, red leaves catch on the edge of your gravestones, as if clinging to one last moment of beauty. And in winter, the snow returns. So, perfect, like no time has passed at all. And you somehow still look ready. Ready to rise if needed. Not to fight but to remind. That justice isn't a shout. It's a vow. That revenge isn't chaos. It's order, carefully folded and delivered like a letter. That honor doesn't shout. It kneels. You've walked into myth, and from myth into memory, and from memory into daily life. You live in museum exhibits. In textbooks. In cosplay photos at Shibuya Station. In samurai dramas airing on Thursday nights, right after cooking shows. You're a symbol now. And yes, that's weird. But it's also, right? Because in a world that asks too little from people, your story still demands everything. Patience. Sacrifice. Decency. You became the kind of heroes no one expects. No gods, no powers, no easy answers. Just 47 tired men in the snow, carrying out the hardest promise they ever made. And we keep retelling it. Not because of how it ended, but because of how it held. So if you visit the temple today, step gently. Bow if it feels right. And maybe, just maybe, leave a message. You don't need to sign it. Just a quiet note in your pocket that says something like, I haven't forgotten. Because neither have they. And now the snow is falling a little slower. The lanterns are flickering lower. And you, dear listener, are still here, still with me, breathing through the hush that follows the tale. You've walked beside swordsmen in disguise, stood at the gates of vengeance, watched honor unfold with the discipline of snowfall. And now it's time to let go. Because the story is done. The swords are buried. The letters are sent. And the footsteps that once echoed down quiet alleys in Edo are fading into the soft silence of sleep. It's a strange kind of peace, isn't it? Not the kind you earn with victory or inherit from power, but the kind that comes from doing what needed to be done, then disappearing without asking for applause. Like lighting a candle and then walking away while it still burns. So now, sink deeper into your pillow. Let the images drift, the white-robed figures in the snow, the lanterns swaying, the temple gate waiting with patience older than the streets around it. You're safe. You're still. And you're part of the memory now too. No sword required. Just breath. And stillness. So close your eyes if you haven't already. Let the city fade. Let the temple remain. And let the quiet carry you wherever you need to go next.